billionaire doctor melts when the janitor's dog invites her to a playbo. He wins her heart. The boardroom on the 42nd floor of the Melbrook Hotel smelled like expensive coffee and unspoken resentment. Celeste Davenport, 24 years old and already carrying the weight of a billion-dollar empire on shoulders that still remembered being young, stared at the spreadsheet projecting third-quarter losses. Her royal blue blazer felt too tight, her denim shorts too casual for a meeting this serious. But she'd stopped caring what the board thought of her wardrobe choices around the same time they'd stopped hiding their doubts about her leadership. "The numbers don't lie, Miss Davenport," Gerald Thompson said, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that made Celeste's jaw ache from clenching. "We're hemorrhaging money in maintenance and operations. Perhaps it's time to consider outsourcing?" Celeste interrupted, her blue eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "You've suggested that 14 times in the past 6 months, Gerald. And 14 times I've explained that quality control is what separates the Melbrook from every other luxury hotel chain. With all due respect, respect is earned, not prefaced." Celeste closed her laptop with a decisive click. "We're done here. I'll review the proposals and make my decision by Friday." The board members filed out, their expensive suits rustling with disapproval, leaving Celeste alone with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the sprawling view of a city that never stopped moving. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, feeling the vibration of life 42 stories below. Divorced at 24, running a company she'd inherited when her father died, living in a mansion so large the echo of her footsteps reminded her every single night that she was utterly, completely alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from her personal assistant. Reminder, hotel inspection, ground floor maintenance, 2 p.m. Celeste glanced at her Rolex. 1:47 p.m. She had 13 minutes to transform from corporate shark to hands-on owner, to walk the halls her father had walked, to pretend she had any idea what she was doing. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a different world. Top floors, power suits and power plays. Ground floor, real work, real people, real lives that didn't revolve around stock portfolios and hostile takeovers. The doors opened with a soft chime, and Celeste stepped into the marble lobby where everything had started to go wrong 3 generations ago, and where everything was about to change. That's when she saw him. Ryan Walker stood near the service corridor, yellow gloves tucked into his belt, blue uniform slightly faded but impeccably clean. He was talking to someone on his phone, and even from across the lobby Celeste could hear the warmth in his voice. "Yes, Hannibal, I promise we'll get ice cream after school. Yes, the kind with sprinkles. No, you cannot have ice cream for dinner, because vegetables exist, that's why." He laughed, and something in Celeste's chest shifted. A small earthquake in a heart she'd thought had gone dormant. Then she heard the bark. It started as a distant rumble, grew into a full-throated announcement of canine joy, and culminated in 70 pounds of golden retriever launching across the lobby at a speed that defied both physics and hotel policy. Celeste had exactly 3 seconds to brace herself before Max, she would learn his name later, much later when she could breathe again, hit her at knee level with the enthusiasm of a meteor strike. She went down hard, not gracefully, not like the poised CEO who'd just dismantled a board member's argument with surgical precision. She went down like a person who'd forgotten that gravity doesn't care about your net worth, landing on the marble floor with her blazer twisted, her shorts riding up, and her expensive blue heels pointing in opposite directions. "Oh my God, Max! Max!" Ryan's voice carried genuine horror as he sprinted across the lobby, phone forgotten, propriety abandoned. He dropped to his knees beside Celeste, hands hovering uncertainly as if he couldn't decide whether touching the CEO would result in immediate termination or justifiable concern. "Miss Davenport, I am so sorry. Are you hurt? Can you move? Should I call?" "I'm fine," Celeste managed, though fine was a generous description for someone who'd just been tackled by an overly enthusiastic dog in front of a lobby full of guests. What is that?" Max had his front legs stretched forward, rear end in the air, tail wagging with such force his entire body shimmied. His tongue lolled out in a dopey grin, and his eyes held an invitation so pure, so joyful, that Celeste forgot about the board meeting, the quarterly losses, the crushing loneliness of her mansion. "That's a playbow," Ryan said quietly, helping Celeste sit up. His hands were gentle but sure, the kind of hands that knew how to fix things. "He's asking if you want to play." Play? The word felt foreign in Celeste's mouth. When was the last time she'd played? When was the last time anyone had invited her to do something purely for joy? Max barked again, softer this time, almost pleading. He doesn't usually knock people over, Ryan said, his face flushed with embarrassment. He's friendly, but this is unusual. He's very particular about who he stopped, as if realizing he was about to say something that might make the situation worse. Celeste looked at the dog, then at Ryan, and made a decision that would change the trajectory of her entire life. Okay, she said. Let's play. The lobby erupted in whispers. Guests pulled out phones. The concierge looked like he might faint. And Celeste Davenport, CEO of the Melbrook hotel chain, sat on the marble floor and let a golden retriever lick her face while his owner watched with an expression somewhere between mortification and wonder. 10 minutes later, after Max had been corralled back to the service area and Celeste had restored some semblance of dignity to her appearance, she found herself doing something unprecedented, following a janitor into the bowels of the hotel. I really need to explain, Ryan said, leading her down a corridor most guests never saw. Max is a therapy dog. Well, technically he's still in training, but he's certified for emotional support. He helps my daughter. Hannah Bell has some anxiety issues, and Max helps her cope when I'm at work. You bring a therapy dog to your job? Celeste asked, not accusatory, just curious. Your father approved it. Ryan stopped at a door marked maintenance, his hand on the knob. 3 years ago when he was still. He trailed off, tactful enough not to finish the sentence. When he was still alive. When he was still running this place. When I was still married and didn't know how badly my life was about to implode. I didn't know that, Celeste said softly. There's a lot the board probably doesn't tell you, Ryan said, and there was something in his voice, not insubordination, but understanding, like he knew what it felt like to be undermined by people who thought they knew better. He opened the door, and Celeste stepped into a world she'd never seen before. The maintenance break room was nothing like the executive spaces upstairs. No marble, no chrome, no carefully curated art pieces chosen by interior designers who charged more per hour than most people made in a week. Just concrete floors, metal lockers, a microwave that had seen better days, and a corner where someone had set up a small workshop. That's where Celeste's heart stopped. Sitting on a workbench gleaming under fluorescent lights like a prayer answered, was a blue Harley Davidson. Not just any Harley. She would know that custom paint job anywhere. The exact shade of blue her father had obsessed over. The chrome detailing he'd spent months perfecting. The leather seat he'd reupholstered himself during the long summer she'd turned 16. Where did you get that? The words came out strangled. Ryan's expression shifted from apologetic to confused. I bought it at an auction about 4 years ago. It was in rough shape, but I've been restoring it. Why? Celeste walked toward the motorcycle like a woman in a dream, or a nightmare. She couldn't tell which. Her fingers traced the gas tank, finding the tiny scratch near the Harley-Davidson logo, the one she'd accidentally made when she was learning to use a wrench. This was my father's, she whispered. We sold it when the hotel hit hard times about 5 years ago. He needed capital to prevent a hostile takeover, and he sold everything that wasn't bolted down. This was the last thing to go. She looked up at Ryan, tears threatening to spill over. He cried when they took it. I'd never seen him cry before. Ryan went very still. I didn't know. The auction house didn't provide history. I saw it and thought it was beautiful. Thought it deserved someone who would love it. He did love it. Celeste's voice broke. We used to work on it together, before everything got complicated, before I had to become someone I didn't recognize. Max, who'd been quiet until now, patted over and pressed his head against Celeste's leg. Not demanding, just offering. Ryan watched his dog, then watched Celeste, and something in his expression shifted, like he was seeing her for the first time, not as the intimidating CEO, but as a person carrying wounds that hadn't healed. Do you know how to ride? He asked quietly. My father taught me, Celeste said, but I haven't been on a motorcycle in years. Ryan reached into his locker and pulled out a helmet. The engine's not quite right yet. I've been troubleshooting a timing issue, but it runs. If you wanted to, if you'd like to take it around the parking lot just to... Yes. The word came out before Celeste could think better of it. Yes, I would like that very much. The parking lot behind the hotel stretched out like freedom itself. Celeste straddled the Harley, her father's Harley, impossibly returned to her by a man who couldn't have known what it meant, and felt 16 again, felt whole again. Ryan stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, yellow gloves discarded, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The clutch is sensitive, he said, and the throttle has a sweet spot about halfway. Too much and she'll... I remember. Celeste's hands found their positions like muscle memory, like prayer, like coming home. My father used to say this bike had a soul. He was right, Ryan said. I've worked on a lot of motorcycles, but this one's different. She wants to be understood, not just ridden. Celeste turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, and the vibration traveled through her body like electricity, like resurrection, like every good memory she'd buried under years of responsibility and disappointment. She closed her eyes and heard her father's voice. Feel it, Celeste. Don't just hear the engine, feel what it's telling you. Feel. When she opened her eyes, Ryan was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You look different, he said, when you're not being a CEO. I feel different, Celeste admitted. I feel like myself. She gave the throttle a gentle twist, and the Harley responded beautifully, rolling forward with a purr that spoke of careful restoration and countless hours of someone's love. She made a slow circuit of the parking lot, relearning the weight, the balance, the way the bike moved like an extension of her body. By the third lap, she was smiling. By the fifth, she was laughing. Ryan laughed too, a sound of pure joy that made Celeste realize she'd never heard genuine happiness in the halls of her own hotel. When she finally pulled back to where he stood and killed the engine, her hands were shaking, but not from fear. Thank you, she said, pulling off the helmet. Her hair was a disaster, her makeup probably smeared, her professional image completely destroyed. She'd never felt better. Thank you for taking care of her. It's been my privilege, Ryan said. Your father had excellent taste. They stood in the afternoon sun, CEO and janitor, separated by a chasm of social class but connected by something neither of them could name yet. Max dozed in a patch of shade, content now that he'd accomplished whatever mysterious canine mission he'd been on. Can I ask you something? Celeste said. Why do you work here? You're clearly skilled with mechanics. You could open your own shop, make real money. Ryan's expression shuddered slightly. Hannah Bell needs stability, consistency. The hotel provides insurance, regular hours, and I get to be there when she gets home from school. Money's not everything. Says someone who has enough of it, Celeste said, then immediately regretted the bitterness in her voice. Says someone who doesn't have much of it, Ryan corrected gently, but has learned what actually matters. I've got a 7-year-old daughter who needs her father present, not just providing. I've got work that's honest, even if it's not glamorous. I've got Max, who somehow knows when people need exactly what I needed when I found him at the shelter. Unconditional acceptance. He paused. And now I know I've been restoring a motorcycle that meant something to someone. That's a pretty good Tuesday, all things considered. Celeste felt something crack in her chest, some carefully constructed wall she'd built between herself and genuine human connection. I don't suppose you'd consider selling it back to me, she asked. I'd pay whatever you want. Ryan looked at the Harley, then back at Celeste and shook his head slowly. It's not finished yet. The timing's still off and the exhaust needs work, and there's a leak in the fuel line I haven't tracked down. When it's perfect, when she's running the way your father would have wanted, then we can talk about what happens next. What if I helped? The words tumbled out before Celeste could stop them. I mean, I remember some things. I probably can't do much, but I could. I don't know, hand you tools, keep you company? Ryan smiled, slow and genuine and devastating. You're the CEO. You want to spend your free time in a maintenance room getting your hands dirty? I want to feel like myself again, Celeste said honestly, even if it's just for an hour here and there, even if I'm terrible at it now. You were never terrible at it, Ryan said quietly, and something in his tone made Celeste's heart skip. What? Nothing, He stopped, shook his head. Thursday evenings around 6 when I do the detail work. If you wanted to stop by, I'd welcome the company. Celeste nodded, not trusting her voice. She handed back the helmet, their fingers brushing in a moment of contact that lasted half a second and felt like eternity. Then she walked back toward the hotel, feeling Ryan's eyes on her back, feeling more alive than she'd felt in years. Behind her, Max gave a soft woof of satisfaction, as if everything was going exactly according to plan. That night, alone in her mansion with 12 bedrooms and zero warmth, Celeste couldn't stop thinking about the Harley, about Ryan's gentle hands guiding her through the bike's quirks, about the way he'd looked at her, not like an employee looking at a boss, but like one person seeing another person's hidden wounds and recognizing them. She pulled out her laptop and did something she hadn't done in months. She looked through old photos, found ones from the summer she turned 16, when her father had taught her everything about engines and life and what it meant to build something with your own hands. There in the background of a photo someone had taken in their old garage was a boy, teenage, skinny, with grease on his face and a shy smile. She'd forgotten about him, the neighbor kid who used to hang around, asking questions about motorcycles, helping her father with projects. Celeste zoomed in on the photo, her heart racing. The boy had the same eyes as the man in the hotel maintenance room, the same gentle hands, the same way of looking at mechanical problems like they were puzzles worth solving. "Oh my God," she whispered to her empty mansion. "Ryan." She grabbed her phone, pulled up the employee directory, found his file. Born and raised in the same neighborhood where she'd spent her teenage years. Before the hotel became successful, before her family moved to the Mansion District, he'd lived 3 houses down. He'd been the quiet kid who'd rather fix things than break them, who'd listen to her father's stories like they were scripture. He'd been her first crush, though she'd never had the courage to tell him, and he'd recognized her, must have recognized her. Why else would he have looked at her like that with such careful understanding? Celeste set down her phone and stared at the ceiling of her enormous bedroom, feeling the weight of coincidence and fate and second chances pressing down on her chest. Max hadn't knocked her over by accident. That dog had known exactly what he was doing. Thursday. She had to wait until Thursday. 2 more days of quarterly reports and board meetings and pretending she was strong enough to run an empire alone. 2 more days until she could be 16 again, with grease under her fingernails and a boy, now a man, who saw her as something more than a title on a business card. She fell asleep thinking about the playbow, about how Max had invited her back into a world where joy still existed, where people connected over shared work instead of shared wealth, where a golden retriever could be wiser than an entire boardroom of executives. Wednesday morning brought another crisis, another. The head of housekeeping quit via email, citing irreconcilable differences with management, which really meant she'd found a better offer at a competing hotel chain. Celeste spent 3 hours conducting emergency interviews, trying to find someone qualified who could start immediately. The 4th candidate was a woman in her 60s named Martha, who walked into the interview with the confidence of someone who'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by fancy offices. "I hear you're hemorrhaging staff," Martha said bluntly, sitting down without being invited. "Want to know why?" Celeste blinked. "I'm supposed to be interviewing you." "Consider this a 2-way interview," Martha said. "I'm good at my job, really good. I can run your housekeeping department with my eyes closed, but I don't work for people who don't respect their employees. So tell me, do you even know the names of the people who clean your rooms?" The question hit like a slap. Celeste opened her mouth to say of course she did, then realized she couldn't name a single housekeeper, could barely name anyone who worked below manager level, if she was being honest. "No," she admitted quietly. "I don't. At least you're honest." Martha's expression softened slightly. "Look, Miss Davenport, I knew your father. He was a good man who treated people with dignity. He knew everyone's name, everyone's kids' names, everyone's struggles. The employees loved him. But since you took over," she trailed off, diplomatic enough not to finish. "Since I took over, I've been trying to prove I'm worthy of inheriting this place," Celeste said. "I've been so focused on the numbers, on keeping the board happy, that I forgot about the actual people who make this hotel run." "Yeah," Martha said. "That's usually how it goes. So what are you going to do about it?" Celeste thought about Ryan, about the way he'd talked about honest work, about being present instead of just providing, about Max, who'd somehow seen through all her defenses to the lonely person underneath. "I'm going to start by hiring you," she said, "and then I'm going to spend 1 day a week working alongside different departments, starting with housekeeping." Martha raised an eyebrow. "You're going to clean rooms?" "I'm going to learn what I've been ignoring," Celeste said. "I can't fix what I don't understand." "Well," Martha stood up, extending her hand. "When can I start?" "How about right now? I've got a mansion that needs cleaning, and I could use someone to tell me exactly what I'm doing wrong." They shook hands, and Celeste felt something shift in her approach to leadership. Her father had built the Melbrock with his hands and his heart. She'd been trying to run it with spreadsheets and strategic planning. Maybe it was time to remember that hotels weren't just buildings. They were people taking care of people. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of anticipation. Celeste had spent the day in meetings, but her mind had been in the maintenance room, wondering if Ryan would actually expect her to show up, wondering if she'd imagined the connection between them. At 5:55 p.m., she took the elevator down to the ground floor, her heart racing like she was 16 again and about to see the boy who made her stomach flip. She'd changed out of her blazer into a simple blue tank top and the denim shorts, pulling her blonde hair into a ponytail. No jewelry except the small pendant her father had given her, a tiny wrench on a gold chain, a joke between them about how she'd always be his little mechanic. The maintenance room door was propped open. Inside, she heard the clank of tools and the low murmur of Ryan's voice talking to Max. She knocked softly, suddenly nervous. "Come in," Ryan called, and when she stepped through the doorway, he looked up from the Harley's engine and smiled. "You came. I said I would." "Yeah, but people say a lot of things." He wiped his hands on a rag, leaving his yellow gloves on the workbench. "CEOs especially, no offense. None taken. I've probably broken more promises than I've kept lately." Celeste approached the motorcycle, seeing it with new eyes now that she knew its history. "Where do we start?" Ryan handed her a wrench. "See this connection here? It's supposed to be tight, but I think there's a vibration issue causing it to loosen over time. Can you hold this steady while I adjust the mounting bracket?" Their hands worked in tandem, close enough that Celeste could feel the warmth radiating from Ryan's skin, could smell motor oil and something clean like soap and sunshine. The work was familiar and foreign at once, muscle memory returning even as her soft hands protested the unfamiliar strain. "You're good at this," Ryan said after 20 minutes of companionable silence. "Better than you think." "My father was patient," Celeste said. "He never made me feel stupid for asking questions. Neither did mine." Ryan paused, his hand stilling on the engine. "He worked construction. Died in a fall when I was 19. I was supposed to go to college, study engineering. But Hannibel's mom got pregnant, and then..." He trailed off. "And then life got complicated," Celeste finished softly. "Yeah, life got really, really complicated." Ryan's voice held old pain, carefully managed. "She didn't make it through childbirth. Hemorrhage they couldn't stop. So suddenly I was a 19-year-old single father with a newborn who needed round-the-clock care and medical bills that would have buried us if your father hadn't given me a job with insurance." Celeste set down her wrench, turning to look at Ryan fully. "My father hired you? 10 years ago, right after Hannibel was born. I was desperate, unskilled, terrified. He took a chance on me." Ryan met her eyes. Said I reminded him of someone who used to help him in his garage. Someone who asked good questions and wasn't afraid to get their hands dirty. The world tilted. He knew. He knew you were the kid from the neighborhood. Of course he knew. Your father never forgot a face. Ryan's smile was sad and sweet at once. He asked about you sometimes. How you were doing at Harvard. How the wedding planning was going. How you were handling the pressure of eventually inheriting all this. What did you tell him? The truth, that I didn't know, because we'd lost touch years ago. Ryan picked up a smaller wrench, focusing on a bolt with unnecessary intensity. That I'd thought about you more than I probably should have, given that you were way out of my league even when we were kids. "Hello, my friend. How was your day today? Is everything okay?" Celeste whispered, and Ryan's hands went still. "What? That's what you used to say. Every time I showed up at the garage frustrated from something at school, or fighting with my mom, or just lost. You'd ask me that, and somehow it made everything feel manageable again." Ryan set down his tools and turned to face her fully, his expression unguarded for the first time. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about that summer," Celeste admitted. "I remember learning to rebuild a carburetor while you quizzed me on the parts. I remember the day you found that injured bird and spent 3 hours building it a nest box. I remember..." She stopped, courage failing. "What else do you remember?" Ryan asked quietly. "I remember being too scared to tell you that I wanted to kiss you," Celeste said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "That I practiced what I'd say about 100 times, and then school started and you were gone, and I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing." Ryan stepped closer, close enough that Celeste could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could see the boy she'd loved hidden in the man he'd become. "I moved in with my aunt across town," he said. "Got transferred to a different school. Spent that entire year wondering if you'd noticed I was gone, if you'd cared, if I'd completely made up the connection I felt." "You didn't make it up," Celeste whispered. "Neither did you," Ryan said, and then his hand was on her cheek, calloused and gentle and exactly right, and Celeste forgot how to breathe. They stood there in the fluorescent-lit maintenance room, surrounded by tools and oil stains and the blue Harley that had somehow brought them back together, two people who'd been half in love as teenagers and were rapidly falling the rest of the way as adults. "I should..." Ryan started, but Max chose that moment to bark, sharp and insistent. They jumped apart like teenagers caught by parents. Ryan glanced at his watch and swore softly. Hannah Bell. I have to pick her up from her friend's house in 15 minutes. He looked at Celeste with genuine regret. Can we? Would you want to continue this? The bike work, I mean, and maybe talking. Saturday, Celeste said impulsively. Come to the mansion. Bring Hannah Bell and Max. We can work on the Harley in my garage. It's got better lighting than this place. And I'll order pizza and we can just see what happens. Ryan studied her face like he was trying to determine if she was serious. You want my 7-year-old daughter running around your mansion? I want to get to know the people who matter to you, Celeste said honestly. And I want to spend more time being the person I used to be, before I forgot how to be happy. Okay, Ryan said softly. Saturday. What time? Noon? We'll be there. He scribbled his phone number on a scrap of paper, their fingers brushing again in that electric moment of contact. Text me the address. Celeste watched him leave, Max trotting at his heels, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone drowning and grasping at straws, but the solid, warm hope of someone who'd found an unexpected lifeline and was ready to hold on tight. She stayed in the maintenance room for another hour, sitting on the floor next to the Harley, running her hands over the blue paint and thinking about second chances, about dogs who knew exactly when to bowl someone over, about boys who grew into men worth knowing. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, already counting down the minutes. Ryan. Celeste smiled and typed back, so is Max, I bet. Max is planning what kind of chaos he can cause in a mansion. Fair warning. Good. This place could use some chaos. She drove home to her empty mansion and started making plans. The garage would need cleaning. She'd have to order child-friendly food, not just pizza. Maybe she should get some toys. Did 7-year-olds still play with toys, or was everything digital now? She was overthinking. That was fine. Overthinking meant caring, and caring meant feeling. And feeling was something she'd shut down for so long that the ache of it coming back to life was almost painful. But it was a good pain, the kind that meant healing. Friday passed in a blur of meetings and decisions and stolen moments checking her phone for messages from Ryan. They texted sporadically. Nothing deep, just small observations about their days. The kind of casual conversation that felt intimate precisely because it was so ordinary. Ryan. Hannah Bell wants to know if your mansion has a pool. Celeste. It does. Indoor heated, outdoor with a slide. Tell her to bring a swimsuit. Ryan. You're spoiling us before we even get there. Celeste. Good. Saturday morning, Celeste woke at dawn and couldn't fall back asleep. She cleaned the already spotless garage, set up the Harley's workspace, arranged snacks in the kitchen, changed clothes 4 times, and finally settled on the outfit that felt most like herself. The royal blue blazer over a white tank top, denim shorts, blue heels that she immediately kicked off in favor of sneakers. At 11:47, the doorbell rang. Celeste practically ran to the door, then forced herself to slow down, to breathe, to not seem desperately eager even though that's exactly what she was. When she opened it, she found Ryan holding a toolbox, Hannah Bell clutching a stuffed unicorn, and Max already wagging his tail with enough force to generate a small windstorm. Hi, Ryan said, and his smile was worth every moment of nervous anticipation. Hi, Celeste said back. Come in. Welcome. Hannah Bell stepped through the door with wide eyes, taking in the marble entryway, the chandelier that cost more than most cars, the sweeping staircase that belonged in a movie. Daddy, she whispered. Is this a castle? Close enough, Ryan whispered back, squeezing her hand. It's too big, Celeste said honestly. I'm the only one who lives here, and most days I forget what half the rooms are even for. But the garage is through here, and that's where the real magic happens. She led them through the house, watching Hannah Bell's reaction to each new space, feeling the mansion through the eyes of a 7-year-old, and realizing how absurdly excessive it all was. Ryan didn't comment, but she could see him taking mental notes, comparing this to whatever modest home he shared with his daughter. The garage was a different story. Here, Celeste had arranged things exactly like her father's old workshop, tools organized by size and function, a radio playing classic rock, a mini fridge stocked with soda and water, the blue Harley occupying pride of place in the center. Oh, Ryan breathed, and Celeste knew she'd done something right. They spent the next 3 hours working on the bike, with Hannah Bell alternating between asking 10,000 questions and playing with Max in the driveway. Celeste taught the little girl how to hold a wrench, explained what different parts did, and found herself enchanted by Hannah Bell's fierce intelligence and complete lack of filter. My daddy says you're very important, Hannah announced during a break for sandwiches. He says you own the whole hotel where he works. I do, Celeste confirmed, but that doesn't make me more important than anyone else. That's what Daddy says too. Hannah took a huge bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. Are you going to fire him? Hannah! Ryan looked mortified. What? I'm just asking. Hannah turned back to Celeste. 'Cause if you fire him, we have to move again, and I just made friends at my new school, and Max really likes the park near our apartment. Celeste's heart broke a little. I'm not going to fire your dad. He's one of the best employees I have, and more importantly, he's teaching me things I forgot I knew. Does that make sense? I guess. Hannah studied Celeste with the kind of intense scrutiny only children can muster. You're prettier than I thought a boss would be, and you have oil on your face. Celeste laughed, wiping at her cheek with the back of her hand. Occupational hazard. I like you, Hannah declared. You can be friends with my dad. I'd like that very much, Celeste said, catching Ryan's eye over his daughter's head. The afternoon melted into evening. They got the timing issue sorted. It had been a simple adjustment that required 2 sets of hands and perfect coordination. They tested the engine, and it purred like a dream, exactly the way Celeste remembered from the summer she turned 16. She's ready, Ryan said, wiping his hands on a rag. Your father would be proud. Our father would be proud, Celeste corrected gently. You're the one who saved her, who put in hundreds of hours bringing her back to life. So what happens now? Ryan asked. Do you want to buy her back? Celeste looked at the Harley, then at Ryan, then at Hannah and Max playing tag in the driveway, and made a decision that came from somewhere deeper than logic. I want to share her, she said. Keep her here, in this garage. Come work on her whenever you want. Ride her when the mood strikes. Teach Hannah how engines work, the way my father taught me, the way you learned from your father. She took a breath. I don't want to own her alone. I want her to belong to both of us. Ryan's expression did something complicated. Surprise and gratitude and something that looked dangerously close to love. You sure about that? That's a hell of a generous offer. I'm sure, Celeste said. This bike brought us back together. Seems wrong to separate her from the person who made that possible. I think Max would argue he brought us together, Ryan said with a smile. Fair point. Max gets visitation rights too. They stood there grinning at each other like idiots while Hannah and Max created chaos in the background. And Celeste felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of happiness. It wasn't about the mansion or the money or the empire she'd inherited. It was about this: grease under her fingernails, laughter echoing in a space designed for work and creation, a man who saw her as more than her last name, a child who asked impossible questions, and a dog who somehow knew exactly what people needed. Stay for dinner, Celeste said impulsively. I'll order Thai food and we can eat in the garden, and Hannah can swim if she wants, and we can just be normal people for a while. Normal people don't live in mansions with indoor pools, Ryan pointed out. Then we'll be abnormal people being normal together. Please? Ryan looked at his daughter, who was currently trying to teach Max to play hopscotch, and nodded. Yeah, okay, we'll stay. Dinner became a revelation. Hannah talked nonstop about everything from her favorite teacher to her theory about why goldfish couldn't live in swimming pools, because they'd get dizzy going in circles, duh. Ryan told stories about the ridiculous maintenance requests he'd handled over the years. Celeste found herself laughing until her stomach hurt, feeling muscles in her face she'd forgotten existed. After dinner, Hannah insisted on showing Celeste her butterfly stroke, which was more splash than stroke, but enthusiastic enough to soak everyone within a 10-foot radius. Max supervised from the pool deck, barking encouragement. Ryan sat next to Celeste on the edge, their feet dangling in the water, watching his daughter play with the kind of contentment that came from knowing she was safe and happy. Thank you for this, he said quietly. She doesn't get a lot of this, whatever this is. Joy? Celeste suggested. Freedom, childhood, all of the above. Ryan's shoulder brushed hers. Her anxiety gets bad sometimes. She worries about me, about money, about things 7-year-olds shouldn't have to worry about. But today, she's just been a kid. That's because of you. That's because of your excellent parenting, Celeste corrected. You've raised an incredible human. I'm just trying not to screw her up too badly. You're doing better than you think. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Hannah and listening to Max's occasional woofs of approval. The sun set behind the mansion, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, and Celeste thought about how empty this space had felt before today, how all the money in the world couldn't buy what she was feeling right now. Can I ask you something? Ryan said eventually. What happened to your marriage? Celeste had known the question was coming eventually. She'd prepared a polite deflection, a surface-level explanation that protected her pride. But sitting here with Ryan, she found herself wanting to tell the truth. He married me for the hotel, she said simply. I was 22, grieving my father, overwhelmed by suddenly running a billion-dollar company. Derek was older, sophisticated, from the right family. The board loved him. He seemed stable and sure, and I thought that's what I needed. She paused. Turns out he was having an affair with his assistant the entire time. They're married now. Living in the penthouse suite, he convinced me to renovate. The irony is not lost on me. I'm sorry, Ryan said, and the simplicity of it was more comforting than elaborate sympathy would have been. I'm not. Not anymore. Celeste pulled her feet from the water, hugging her knees. It hurt like hell at the time, but it taught me something important. I'd rather be alone than be with someone who sees me as a transaction instead of a person. You deserve better than that. So do you, Celeste said, looking at him. Losing someone you loved in childbirth, raising a daughter alone, working a job where people probably underestimate you constantly, that's not easy. Nothing worthwhile is easy, Ryan said, but Hannibal makes it worth it. Every sleepless night, every anxiety attack, every time I had to choose between fixing our car or buying her new shoes, she makes all of it worth it. Celeste reached out and took his hand, and Ryan's fingers intertwined with hers like they'd been doing it for years instead of minutes. I think my father knew, she said softly. When he hired you, when he let you keep Max at the hotel, when he talked about you, I think he knew that someday I'd need someone who understood what it meant to build something with your own hands. Someone who valued work over wealth. Or maybe he just knew I needed a job and took pity on a desperate kid, Ryan said. But his smile suggested he didn't really believe that. My father didn't do pity. He did investment in people he believed in. Then I guess I'd better live up to that belief. Hannibal chose that moment to cannonball into the pool with such force that the resulting splash soaked both adults. Max barked with joy, Ryan laughed, and Celeste realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this perfectly, completely content. They stayed until Hannibal was yawning between sentences, until Max was curled up asleep on a pool lounger, until the stars came out and the night air turned cool. Ryan carried his sleeping daughter to the car, while Celeste walked beside him, Max padding along behind. This was perfect, Ryan said, settling Hannibal into her car seat. Thank you. Come back next Saturday? Celeste asked, trying not to sound desperate. There's a fuel line leak I want to tackle, and I think the brake pads need replacing, and you want an excuse to see us again? Ryan finished with a knowing smile. Yes, I really do. He stepped closer, close enough that Celeste had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You don't need an excuse, Celeste. Just ask. I'd like to see you again, she said, heart racing. You and Hannibal and Max. Not just for the bike. For this. For whatever this is. This is two people who have spent 10 years wondering what if, Ryan said softly, and who just got a second chance to find out. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet and full of promise, then got in the car and drove away. Celeste stood in her driveway, touching the spot where his lips had been, feeling like she'd just woken up from a very long sleep. Inside the mansion, her phone rang. The board chair, probably calling to complain about something. She ignored it. Whatever crisis they thought was urgent could wait until Monday. For the first time in years, Celeste had something more important than quarterly earnings and strategic planning. She had hope. She had grease under her fingernails. She had the memory of a little girl's laughter and a man's gentle kiss and a dog's approving tail wag. She had the beginning of something real. And in the garage, the blue Harley-Davidson sat gleaming under the lights, waiting for its next adventure. A physical reminder that sometimes the things you lose come back to you in unexpected ways, brought by unexpected people, changing everything you thought you knew about what it meant to be happy. 6 months later, the Melbrook Hotel's quarterly earnings were the best they'd been in 5 years. The board attributed it to Celeste's new management style, the hands-on approach, the employee engagement programs, the way she'd learned everyone's name and actually meant it when she asked about their families. But Celeste knew the truth. The hotel was thriving because she was thriving. And she was thriving because every Saturday a single father and his daughter showed up at her mansion with a golden retriever and reminded her what actually mattered. The blue Harley-Davidson was perfect now, purring like a dream every time they took her out. Ryan had taught Hannibal the basics of engine maintenance, and the 8-year-old could now identify parts faster than some of his co-workers. Celeste had started a scholarship fund for employees' children, personally funded, in memory of her father. The board thought it was good PR. She knew it was because Hannah Bell had asked why some kids couldn't afford school supplies, and the question had broken something open in Celeste's heart. Today was different, though. Today, Ryan had asked her to meet him at the beach. Not the private beach at the hotel, but the public one where regular people went, where the sand wasn't perfectly groomed and the water wasn't temperature controlled. Celeste arrived at noon to find Ryan standing by the blue Harley, Hannah Bell building a sandcastle nearby, Max chasing seagulls with unbridled joy. Ryan wore faded jeans and a white t-shirt instead of his work uniform, and the sight of him in casual clothes still made Celeste's heart skip. "Hey," he said, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like salt air and promise. 6 months together and every kiss still felt like the first one. "Hey yourself." Celeste wrapped her arms around his waist, fitting against him like she'd been designed for exactly this spot. "What's the occasion? Can't a guy just want to spend a beautiful day with his favorite people?" Ryan asked, but there was something in his eyes. Nervousness, maybe, or anticipation. They spread out a blanket while Hannah Bell provided running commentary on her sandcastle's architectural features. Max appointed himself official supervisor, barking at any seagull that dared come too close. Celeste lay back, feeling the sun on her face, Ryan's hand in hers, and thought about how far she'd come from that Tuesday morning when a dog had knocked her over and changed her life. "I've been thinking," Ryan said after a while, "about the future, about what we're building together." Celeste's heart started racing. "Yeah? Hannah Bell loves you. Max definitely loves you. And I." He paused, sitting up and pulling something from his pocket. "I've loved you since I was 15 years old and too scared to say it. I loved you when you disappeared from my life. I loved you when your father hired me and told me stories about his brilliant daughter. I loved you when Max knocked you over in that lobby and you laughed instead of getting angry. And I love you now, more than I have words for." He opened a small box revealing a ring that wasn't flashy or expensive but was absolutely perfect. A simple band with a small sapphire the exact blue of the Harley's paint. "Marry me," Ryan said. "Not because I want your money or your hotel or anything except you. Marry me because we're better together than apart. Because Hannah Bell needs a mom who teaches her that women can be both powerful and kind. Because Max has already decided you're part of the pack. Because I can't imagine any future that doesn't have you in it." Celeste was crying, happy tears that blurred the world into watercolor beauty. Yes, God, yes. Hannah Bell shrieked with joy, abandoning her sandcastle to throw herself at both of them. Max barked his approval, running circles around the blanket, and Celeste Davenport, CEO of the Melbrook Hotel, billionaire heiress, woman who'd thought she'd lost her chance at happiness, slipped the ring onto her finger, and kissed the man who'd been her first love and would be her last. They stayed at the beach until sunset, making plans and telling stories and being the kind of family Celeste had thought only existed in movies. As they packed up to leave, Hannah Bell tugged on Celeste's sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" "Always," Celeste said, kneeling down to the little girl's level. "Did any of you have an important object?" Hannah Bell asked seriously. "Something that reminded you of someone special?" Celeste looked at the Harley gleaming in the fading light. "Yes, sweetheart. I had a motorcycle that belonged to my father. I thought I'd lost it forever, but it came back to me, and it brought your dad back too. That's magic," Hannah Bell declared. "Yeah," Ryan said, pulling both of them close. "It really is." They rode home 3 on the Harley, carefully, legally, with Hannah Bell secured between them wearing her special helmet, while Max ran alongside, tongue flapping in the wind. Celeste's mansion wasn't empty anymore. It was full of motorcycle parts and dog toys and a little girl's artwork on the refrigerator. It was full of Saturday morning pancakes and Sunday afternoon bike rides and weeknight dinners where they all talked about their days. It was full of life, full of love, full of second chances and play bows and golden retrievers who somehow knew exactly when to knock someone over and change everything. The board still questioned some of Celeste's decisions. Society still whispered about the CEO who'd married her janitor. But Celeste had learned something her father had known all along. The richest life isn't measured in dollars or quarterly earnings or the size of your mansion. It's measured in grease under your fingernails and a child's laughter and a man who sees you, really sees you, and loves every part, even the broken bits. It's measured in moments like this, riding into the sunset on a blue Harley-Davidson with everyone you love either beside you or running alongside. As they pulled into the driveway, Hannah Bell shouted, "Again! Let's do it again!" And Celeste laughed and said, "Tomorrow, sweetheart. We've got all the tomorrows in the world." Max barked his agreement. Ryan squeezed her hand, and Celeste realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Home. Not the mansion, with 12 bedrooms. Home and the people who chose to fill it with joy.